What you're looking at here is a printout from the Infinity Army software that the Devil Team created that you can actually download from infinitythegame.com or use from their website. It provides a nice overview of the entire Ariadna army list and includes stats specifically to the weapons that they are carrying. We can tell right away that this is an Ariadna list. It has 125 points, which matches our point total for this particular battle exactly, but uses 0 special weapon costs. When you're building an Infinity Army list, for every 50 points of your list, you would be granted 1 special weapon cost. In this case, for 125 points, you'd be granted 2.5 special weapon costs. We don't use it in this particular army list, but I wanted to use every single model in the starter pack, and in order to do so, I found that this was the best way to handle it. For every Infinity Army list that you build, you're going to need to have a lieutenant, and only certain models per faction or sectorial army can be your lieutenant. In this case, we have a Line Kazakh who is our lieutenant, and we have 3 Line Kazakhs that are equipped identically, so even if the opponent is able to figure out that our lieutenant is a Line Kazakh, that the opponent doesn't know exactly which one. For this army, for this game, our lieutenant is the female holding up her rifle at a diagonal. Let's take a moment to take a look at a stat line for an Infinity model. For every order that you spend, you can do 2 short skills or 1 long skill. Movement is a short skill, so if you spend one order on this particular model and you want them to move twice, they get to move 4 inches, then 4 inches again. Now, certain models will have different varying numbers for their movement, and sometimes you'll see a 4-2, sometimes you'll see a 6-4, and that would mean that for a particular order, the first movement can be up to that first number, and the second movement can be up to that second number. The next 2 values that we see are close combat and ballistic skill, and there's a lot of things that can alter or modify what the value needs to be, but this is the base value for this particular model. And you're going to want to roll that number or less after you've applied the modifiers to determine whether or not you hit in close combat or with a ranged weapon. The next value is their pH, it's their physicality. This impacts things such as being able to dodge when being fired at, climbing walls, jumping over chasms, these kinds of things. The next value is the willpower, and for Lieutenant it's important because at the beginning of the game you'll have a face-to-face willpower roll. That willpower roll will determine who gets to go first and who gets to deploy first. Other things that willpower is used for are things like having enough morale to stay in combat, or trying to discover a model that is camouflaged. The next 2 values are your armor and your biological technical shielding. These 2 values impact how well your model can defend itself after being hit with either more of a ballistic round or a EM/viral round. There are some other things that BTS is used for, like defense against being hacked. And the last value is the number of wounds that the model has. When the model goes to 0 wounds, it's unconscious. If it goes to a negative wound value, it is dead. BTS is the only value in this entire list of numbers that you want to actually see a negative value for. The more extreme the negative value, the better the biological technical shielding for the model. This value at the far right hand corner is how many points you spent to put that model into your army list. The Line Kazakhs are relatively low cost to bring onto an army to increase the number of orders that an Ariadna force could have. Each one of the Line Kazakhs is equipped with a rifle and a pistol knife combo. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weapon portion of the printout to see what a rifle can do. So across the stat line for a rifle, you'll see that if the model that you're shooting at is from 0 to 8 inches away from the model carrying a rifle, they get no modifier to shooting that person. If the opponent is 8 to 16 inches away, they get a +3 modifier. 16 to 24 inches away, it's a -3, and 24 to 48, it's a -6. Beyond 48 inches, the rifle will simply not hit. The damage value of the rifle is a 13. If you want to know how this gets played out, take a look at the section regarding rolls and orders. And the rifle has a burst 3, which means that during your active turn, you get to roll 3 dice, indicating 3 shots coming out of the rifle at your opponent. If you are responding to being shot at, that number drops from a 3 to a 1, unless you're in a linked team, which is beyond the scope of this intro tutorial. The ammunition it fires is normal, which there are different ammunition types like DA, which might cause a person to have 2 saves. In this case, it's just normal. The rifle does not utilize a template. It is not subject to being harmed by an EM weapon. So if someone threw an EM grenade, it would not impact the functionality of the rifle. And this last column is for CC no, which means that you cannot use the rifle in close combat. If we take a look at the knife, you'll notice that there are no ranges on it. The damage is the pH of the model using the knife -2. And that we can see in close combat, it is, yes, it can be used. Since the line Kazakh has a pH of 11, that would mean that the knife does a damage 9. And this is one of those cases where utilizing a pistol, which could be used as a really, really short range weapon if you needed to, its damage value though is an 11. So instead of using the knife, which would be a damage of 9 with the line Kazakh, using a pistol in close combat and getting the damage 11 would be a much better idea. What about the other models in this Ariadna list? We have one veteran Kazakh. You can see it's much more costly to put this model on the table. The movement is still 4-4. Close combat proficiency is better, going from 13 to 15. Ballistic skill is better with a 13 instead of 11. pH is improved to 13. Willpower is the same, 13. Armor, though, we notice does a fairly significant jump from 1 to 4. BTS again remains 0, and the veteran Kazakh only has 1 wound. If we look at the information below the stat line, we start to see some more interesting information regarding the model. The model is this model provides a regular order. There can only be one of 2 values here. It's either regular or irregular. As long as your lieutenant hasn't fallen when you have a model with a regular order, it adds its order to a pool which can be divvied up however the commander of the army wants to use the order. So in this case, there's 6 models, all with regular orders. We can see this at the top of the sheet, that there's 6 regular orders in this army. You could apply all 6 orders to the veteran Kazakh. You can divvy it however you want. It could be, 2 to him, 1 to him, 3 to him, and none to everyone else. The next stat over on the veteran Kazakh, you'll see that he's not impetuous. There's only one of 3 values that could be there. Not impetuous, impetuous, or frenzy. Models that are impetuous are given orders that have to be used before any other regular or irregular orders can be given. And in their set of orders, the first thing that has to happen is that they have to move closer to the nearest opponent model. By moving closer to the nearest opposing model, sometimes this can cause issues, since in Infinity, your opponent can fire back even when it's not their turn. Non-impetuous models are not subject to that. Models that have frenzy here instead of non-impetuous or impetuous act normally until they have slain another model on the opposing team. When that happens, they move from frenzy to impetuous. Other things this veteran Kazakh has is shock immunity, which means that if the veteran Kazakh is hit with either a ballistic or close combat weapon with shock special ammunition, he does not pass directly to dead. Shock weaponry normally means for models with only 1 wound that they move from, instead of taking 1 wound and going to 0, which would mean unconscious, they go directly to dead. The veteran Kazakh also has an X visor. This would mean that no matter what the weapon ranges show that apply negative modifiers, and X-Visor means that this model never takes a negative modifier. He could take a positive modifier if they're in a special range band that is good for this particular weapon, but he will never take a negative modifier. We skipped over this, but the Veteran Kazakh also has the Veteran skill, and that means that he has two special abilities. One is Zero Wound Incapacitation and Sixth Sense Level 2. With Zero Wound Incapacitation, it means that this model could have 0 wounds, and instead of being incapacitated or unconscious, the model can still act normally, even with 0 wounds. Sixth Sense Level 2 means that no matter where his opponent is on the board, he cannot be surprised by an attack. He can't, a model coming out of camouflage or TO camouflage or shooting at him from behind, this model reacts as though he is facing that model that is attacking him and can respond accordingly during the response turn of the player. The Veteran Kazakh has a T2 rifle, which has special ammunition. We'll probably see that in the game, as well as a light flamethrower, pistol, and close combat weapon. Let's take a look at the last two models. We have a Highlander Grey. Again, this model is Frenzy, has shock immunity, and has a special skill known as Dogged, which means that if this model goes to 0 wounds instead of becoming incapacitated, if they keep spending orders on that model, he can keep going, but at the conclusion of the turn, he dies. The Highlander Grey is equipped with a rifle, two light shotguns, which means he can fire both light shotguns instead of the rifle. He's also equipped with grenades and smoke grenades. We'll probably see how that works in the game. The last model is a Chaucer, who again is regular, not impetuous. We're not going to worry about whether or not a model has no cube or cube. That's kind of beyond the scope of this intro tutorial. He does have camouflage though and infiltration, which means at the beginning of the game when deployed, he shows up as simply a marker instead of the model itself, and can be deployed up to 50% of the board from the side that he's coming in on. Has Sixth Sense Level 1, which means if the opposing model is within 8 inches, he can't be surprised. He's equipped with a rifle, light flamethrower, anti-personnel mines, pistol, and knife. And that pretty much wraps up all the information you need to know about the Ariadna starter list for the intro tutorial. Let's take one more quick look at the Ariadna models so you might recognize them during the game. Again, here are our line Kazakhs with the Lieutenant, our Veteran line Kazakh, our Chaucer, and our Highlander Grey.